Okay. All right, so let's talk about constructing or making a box plot. Now, it's very simple to do because you really already know how to do all the parts. Okay. Now, they are very popular in lots of places. In elementary school, sometimes they call them a box and whiskers, and you'll see why when we finish drawing. All right. Now, what you're going to need is this. You're going to need 5 numbers, but they're 5 particular numbers to make the box plot. Okay. And the 5 numbers that you're going to need are this. You're going to need the minimum, so the smallest. You're going to need the maximum, so you're going to need the biggest. You're going to need the median. Now remind me how I find median. Tell me what I do. Put them what? In order, and then which value do I grab? The middle one. So you understand, in other words, you got the low, the middle, and the high. Now the other 2 values, you don't think you know what they are, but you do. Okay? One is called Q1 and one is called Q3. Now Q stands for quartile. Now, the root word is quart. How many are in a quart? What does a quart mean?
1 quart.
You got 4, right? But I want you to think about it like this. If I had a box and I wanted to divide that box into 4 equal pieces, how many segments would I have to draw in the box to do that? 3. If I halved it, and then if I half that and half that. Now, don't I get 4 congruent pieces? That's why there's a Q1 and a Q2 and a Q3. It bothers people there's not 4 of them. But the 3 segments divided into 4 pieces. So I've got to be able to find Q1 and Q3. Well, how do I do that? You already know how to do that. Because these are congruent, right? So this would be 25%. This would be 25%. That would be 25%. And that would be 25%. So what that means is Q1 is just another name for piece of 25. And you told me a minute ago you knew how to find those. Q2 is going to be the same thing as piece of 50. And Q3 is going to be the same thing as piece of what? 75. So to me, the easiest way to remember is think in terms of quarters and pennies. 1 quarter is 25 pennies. 2 quarters is 50 pennies. 3 quarters is what? 75 pennies. So I'm going to put in parentheses here, piece of 25 and piece of what? 75. And you told me what to do. That's when I have to do the locator numbers, isn't it? All right, so we're going to do one, all right, in a second. Now, what's going to happen next is this. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to put those values, those 5 numbers on the number line. All right, you're going to put those 5 numbers on the number line. All right. Then you're going to draw a segment above each of those numbers. Okay, you're going to draw just a little bar, a little segment above each of those numbers. You're going to connect the tops of the 3 middle segments And you're going to connect the bottom of those three middle segments. Okay, so you're going to connect the tops of the three middle segments, and you're going to connect the bottoms of the three middle segments. That's what's going to end up making the box. And then you're simply going to connect that box to the maximum and the minimum. You'll see what I mean when we do one. So it's super easy to do. You're going to connect the box to that maximum and that minimum. Now, we're going to do that. Okay. So I'm going to put some data up here. You got your notes beside you so you can read your notes as we do it. Suppose this was your data. 36, 22, 18, 20, 47, 30, 29, 15, 11, 32, 33, another 30, a 21, and how about a 25? And the directions say, make a box plot. All right, make a box plot. So if I make a box plot, these are the three numbers I need. I need the maximum. I need the minimum. I need the median. I need Q1, and I need Q3. So what do you think is the first thing I need to do? Put them in order. Now, the easiest way to put them in order is you can put them in order yourself, or can't you make a machine put them in order? So remind me how I make the calculator put them in order. What do I do? Where do I go? Stats. I go to stats. What do I go to? Calc. What do I go to? You tell me, where do I go now that I'm in stats? I go to edit. When I go to edit, lists like L1, L2, L3 come up. I don't care where you put them, but you got to remember where you put them. Like I'm going to put mine in L1. So 36, enter. 22, enter, and so forth. So I'm going to enter all my data in my machine. You need to practice doing it so you can do it on your test, because I'm not going to be doing it for you on your test. Now, here's the first thing I would do after I got my data in my list. At the bottom, I notice mine says L1, and in parentheses, it's got a 15. And it equals. What that's telling me is it's waiting on me to type in the 15th number. So what does that mean? I must have entered how many in my machine? 14. So I'm going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'll make sure I didn't skip one. Now, if it was a test, I'd go back and double check that I typed them in correctly. Okay, so they're in my machine, but they're not in order. So how do I get the machine now to put them in order? I go back to what? Stat. And I either go down to sort A or sort D. Now, I'm not going to be doing percentiles. So since I'm a visual learner, if I want mine to go high to low, which one goes high to low? Sort A or sort D? D. Descending. Sort A means ascending. So either getting bigger or getting smaller. So I'm going to sort D. It's got a parenthesis asking me, where did you put your data? Okay, I put mine in L1, so I'll do second 1, close my parenthesis and enter, and it says done. Then to actually see my list, I've got to go back to stat and back to edit. And there my numbers are in order. So I've got a 47, a 36, a 33, a 32, two 30s, a 29. Now I've got to scroll down to see. I've got a 25, a 22, a 21, a 20. And then I've got an 18 and a 15. And an 11. Is that all the numbers in your list? Is that what y'all got? So what's your maximum? 40 what? 7. What's your minimum? Isn't it 11? Okay, remind me how I find the median. What did you tell me to do? Count to what? To the middle. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are two numbers in the middle. So some of y'all, some of the people that took the pop test on Tuesday got this one confused. You got mid-range and median all whacked out. What do I do with those two numbers?
Average them.
Average them. So what do I do? Add them or subtract them? Okay, you got the calculator. So take your 29 and add it to your 25 and then divide it by 2. And tell me what you get. 21. Now, if it comes out to be a decimal, leave it a decimal, don't round it off. Is everybody okay? Now, I need Q1 and Q3, but now what is Q1 really the same thing as? Piece of what? 25. So why don't you go find me a piece of 25 on your paper? But
If we did it on our calculator,
you show it to me.
you can go to,
In other words, if you go down to add and go down, it'll be down there. When it's got that down arrow, it means there's more information.
the VAR stats has like all 5 numbers. You can
Right. Okay. So go find me piece of 25. All right. So to remind you, in case you have a piece of 30 to do on your test, what do I do when I need a piece of number? What's the first thing I do? Find my what? Locator number, right? How do I find the locator number? What do I do? Put my what? Put my percent over what? 100. Then what is that going to get multiplied by?
number.
My number of pieces of data. How many were in my list? 14. So that turns your percent back to a decimal. So I need 0.25 times 14. All right, tell what my locator number came out to be. You got the calculator. What does that come out to be? What is it?
3.5.
3.5. Now, what do I do with my locator number? Do I round off or up? Up. In this case, it wouldn't matter because it'd be both. But either way, 3 point anything is going to round to what? 4. Now, is 4 my answer? No. What do? I pick the what? 4th number. Do I start at here? No, I'll start what? Down here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. What's my 4th number? 20. So you go find me Q3. Question.
How much work do you want us to show for the test?
That's completely up to you. Here's what I tell people. I can only give you credit for what's on the paper. So if I've got scratch work, if you make a careless error, then if I only have one step and it's wrong, I can only give you like 1 point out of 5. If I have all of this and you get down to here and all of a sudden you put a 3, now I can give you, you got it right down here, I'd probably say -1. So the more work you show, the more likely you are to get more partial credit. Now, if it's right, it's fine. Like if I get it off the calculator and you got it off the calculator correctly, you get full credit. But if you were to grab it off the calculator incorrectly, then you get no credit because I don't see anything right that you did. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It's just completely up to you. Okay. Now, your locator number, you had 75 over 100 times 14, right? What did that locator number come out to be?
10.5.
2.5?
10.5.
10.5. So what did you round it to? 11. So you pick the 11th number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Did you pick 32? So is everybody okay on finding your 5 numbers? So if I told you to find like P sub 40, you wouldn't find it for this, but before, everybody knows how to do it. We good? Now look what it says to do next. I've got my 5 numbers. What am I going to do with those 5 numbers? I'm going to put them what? On a number line, am I not? Now, if it's a number line, everything's got to be equally distant. In other words, I've got at least got to go from 11 to what? To 47. Now, you don't necessarily have to start with 0. Now, I probably would in this case, maybe I'll start with 10. Okay? Maybe I decide I'm going to go up by 10s. You've at least got to go from your low to your what? To your high. Now, if my number started with 152, if that was the lowest, I'm not going to, So I just need to know what you're going up by on this number line. Now, on that number line, I put my 5 numbers. So what's one number that's on that number line? 40 what? So 47 would be about right there. Everybody okay? Then I need an 11. 11's almost right at 10. Then I need a 27. So 25 would be about halfway, so it's a little more than halfway. All right, 20, just right there at 20, and then I need 32, so a little more than 30. Then notice what it says. It says draw a segment above each of those numbers. So I'm going to put a segment above this one, a segment above that one, and so forth. Then it says connect the tops of the 3 middle segments. Aren't these the 3 segments in the middle? So I'm going to connect the tops of those, and I'm going to connect the what? The bottoms of those. And that forms a box. And then your last step says connect that box to the maximum and the minimum. So what that means is the middle of this right side gets connected to the maximum, and the middle of that left side of the box is connected to the minimum. That's a box and whiskers graph. All right, so that's why Alicia calls it a box and whiskers. It's like whiskers on a cat, but it's called a box plot. Now, here's the reason the box plots are good. Box plots show you how the data is spread. So do you see that this is 25% of your data, this is 25% of your data, that's 25% of your data, and that's 25% of your data? Now, this bar will not always be in the middle of the box. It depends on how your data is condensed and expanded. So do you see that this 25% is spread out more than what? Than that 25%. So, I mean, you may end up with box plots that look like this. So what that would tell me is that the first 50% of my data is jammed up pretty close, but the last 50% is spread what? Way out. So it's a way to see kind of the spread of your data pretty quickly in 25% increments. So they like those a lot. Right? And that's your last graph that you're responsible for on your test. So that's basically where your test material ends. So let's kind of go talk about your test. Okay? So part of your homework is I'm going to give you like a list of numbers. You have to make me a what? This box plot. Okay? Now, so your test is going to cover chapters 1 through 3. Now, chapter 1 is a lot of vocabulary. And it's not going to be like fill in the blank or magic. Okay, it may be true, false, it might be discussion, it might be here's a scenario. So you need to know those definitions. So what do you call all the items that you're investigating? That's population. What do we call a subset of that population?
Sample.
Sampling. Now, let me ask you this. When you're getting data, that data can either be qualitative or quantitative. All right? Which one is your hair color? Qualitative or quantitative? Qualitative. What about your IQ? Quantitative. So quantitative are numbers and qualitative are non-numerical. But that's what I mean by I might make you give me an example. Or I might give you an example and say, which one is this? Now, if it's quantitative, if it's numbers, you can talk about those numbers being discrete or continuous. All right? Which one has a finite number of possibilities with gaps in the measuring scale? Discrete. So give me an example of discrete data. Because I might give you that on your test. Give me a real life example of discrete data. Shoe size. What's another one that's not one I gave? What about number of people in this room? I can't have 2.05 people. With me? ACT scores. So there are lots of discrete data. You don't score a 21.23579. Is everybody with me? You score 21 or 22. So discrete data, that's what, just give me an example of continuous data. Weight, height, is everybody with me? Okay. So you need to know the definitions and be able to apply the definitions. All right, we talked about different kinds of sampling. All right, what's one kind of sampling? Random. What is random sampling?
Every has an equal chance.
All right, everything in the population's got exactly the same chance of getting fit. All right, is that a good kind of sampling or a poor kind of sampling? Good. Random does not mean haphazard, but it's very hard to do. Okay? What if I gave you a list of people from MC and I picked every fifth person in the list? That's systematic. So that might be something I gave you on a test. Your population of MC students, I got a list of MC students from the registrar and I picked every fifth name on the list. What kind of sampling is that? So I think it's a very straightforward way of wording it. Is everybody with me? All right. What if I gave you this scenario? I get a list of all the 8 o'clock classes at MC. And I pick 10 students from every 8 o'clock class. What kind of sampling is that? That's stratified. Versus this. I get a list of all the classes that are at 8 o'clock at MC. And I pick everybody in 5 whole classes. That's what? Cluster. So the difference in stratified and the difference in cluster would be, both of them involve groups. But with stratified, you pick some of every group and you don't pick some of every group. So every 8 o'clock class has some people that got picked and some people that what? Didn't. Every group has some people picked and some people not picked. That's stratified. Cluster is when I pick all of a group and then don't pick any of another group. So what I said in class that day was all of some or some of all. But that's the way I would word it on the test. I would give you like a scenario that I think is very straightforward necessarily and ask you maybe which one is this. What if you just talk to everybody that walks in the MC cafeteria? That's just convenience. Is that a good way to do sampling? No, it's a terrible way to do sampling. Okay? So you do need to know your different kinds of sampling. And I'm going to make sure that when they're worded on the test, I think they're very straightforward. So that you don't have any question about, kind of what you're doing. If I told you that I got a list of MC students and told the computer to randomly spit out 29 student ID numbers, what's that one? That one's random. Is everybody with me? Because I'm not doing it. Now, I can't just pick 25 randoms. Everybody with me? It's going to have to be done from some kind of non-human thing for it to really be random. okay? So make sure you do know that. Now, there are levels of measurement. Nominal, what's a little more than nominal? Ordinal, what's more than that? Interval, and then what? Ratio. And again, I might give you a scenario. I might say something like, the money in your bank account. If I get the bank balance of 500 people, what kind of data do I have? So I've got 500 bank balances. Is everybody with me? Now, first of all, are they category only, or can I put those bank balances in some kind of order? You tell me.
You can put it in order.
I can put them in order, so it's not nominal. Nominal data is category only. Okay? That might be like your hair color. Blonde is not higher, lower, better, worse, before, after, brunette. Okay? So that those bank balances are at least ordinal. Now, when they're in order, if these two values differ, are the differences known and meaningful? Now, what is that? What are we talking about? If these two differ by $2 and these two differ by $2, does $2 here mean the same thing as $2 up here? Yeah. So now I move from ordinal at least to what? Interval. Now, how do I decide between interval and ratio? What's the deciding factor there?
Absolute zero.
Absolute zero. Now, what does an absolute zero mean? It means that you can't go past it, right? So with bank balances, somebody could have a zero bank balance. Is that true? Could somebody go past a zero and have a bank balance that's negative? Is that possible?
Yep.
Yep. So it's not ratio. It's only what? Interval. Because there's a zero, but if you start taking money out and you don't have money to cover it, you understand what I'm saying? The bank, a lot of times, will start covering it and charge you a fee. So you got to check those bank balances, because if you use that debit card and you don't have enough money to cover it, they're going to cover it and then charge you about $35 for covering it for you. And the fun part is they'll run it more than once. They're looking at your bank balance the next day and you haven't put any money in. They'll run it again and charge you another $35. So that's not ratio, that is interval. But if I were measuring the length, if I were measuring everybody's height, okay, I can put those heights in order, right? So does the difference of 2 inches between these two people mean the same thing if these differ by 2? What? Yeah, so now I'm at least up to interval. When you're measuring, and there is zero when you're measuring somebody's height. I don't know if anybody's measured zero, you see what I'm saying? Is there a zero below that? Can somebody be a negative length? So that one is what? Ratio. So do make sure you can do those kind of things. So chapter 1 is a lot of vocabulary, and been proven to me you understand the vocabulary. All right. Chapter 2 is where you start doing what you probably think of as more math things. So if I give you a list of data, you should be able to make me a frequency table out of it. Okay? So I might give you a list of data and say, make me a frequency table with 4 classes. Or I might give you a frequency table and say, make me a frequency table in the first class has got to be 29 to 37. So there are different ways of doing it, but you've got to be able to make a frequency table. Now, then you've got 4 different kinds of graphs that you might need to be able to draw. One of them is a histogram, like your pop test. You tell me what should pop in your head? Bar graph, and what goes on the horizontal? The boundaries. Okay, a second kind I might ask you to draw is a frequency polygon. What pops in your head? Line graph. What goes on the horizontal? The midpoints. Okay. The third thing I might ask you to draw is a circle graph. So you still got to have that frequency table, but you take every individual frequency and divide by the total to get a decimal. Now with those decimals, you have to change them to percents and angle measures. How do you change it to percents? Multiply by 100. How do you change the angle measures? About 360. And if I don't see the angle measures in your scratch work, I will not take your graph. Okay? So you can't go, that looks like about 30% of the circle to me. I've got to see what angle measure you thought you were drawing. So if I don't see any work, I won't take the graphs. Okay, Rachel?
You said previously we could bring the protractor, right?
Yeah, you're welcome to bring the protractor, absolutely. Okay? Now, your fourth kind of graph is this box plot. So those are the four graphs you got to be able to draw. Okay? You've also, if I give you a frequency table, you've got to be able to find me the midpoints of classes, the boundaries of classes, the limits of classes, and the width of the table. So make sure that you can do that. Now, which ones are the numbers that are just sitting there, limits or boundaries? Limits. Don't get the two confused or there's no partial credit. Okay? Then you got to be able to find me measures of center, like they had their pop test last time. So you should have practiced that at home to make sure. So I might give you a list of data until you find me the mean, the median, the mode, and the mid-range. All right, you had measures of variation. I may from that list tell you to find me the standard deviation. Or I may tell you to find me the variance. I might tell you to find me the range. Now, some of the ones I graded their pop test last time got range confused with mid-range. So you got to know when you add and when you subtract, when you divide by 2 and when you don't. Okay? Then you've also got to be able to do your measures of relative standing, like you had for today. Z-scores. If I give you find me P sub 30, or what percentile is the number 17 in your list. Now, on this test, there are 2 times when you round up instead of off. What are the 2 times that you round up? The locator number, right? What was the other one? Class what? Width. Every other time, you simply round off mathematically. Never do you chop off. Now, the whole semester, there's only going to be 3 times that you round up, and 2 of them are on test 1. There's one other time at the very toward the end of the class. Okay? Question?
Can you go over the time? Can you round up?
Yes, you round it up when you're doing the locator number. So like a minute ago, if we'd have gotten 3.1 instead of 3.5, we'd still round up to a 4. Okay? The other time you round up is on class width. Remember, how do you find class width? You take your high minus your low, and you divide by your number of classes. So if that number came out to be like 12.3, I still would go up to 13. So class width and locator numbers are the 2 times you round up. Every other time you round off. So 5 or bigger, you go up, 4 or smaller, you stay the same. Okay? Any other questions about your test? Question? No?
What do we do with the percentages for the circle graph?
I want, in the pieces of the pie, so to speak, I want just your what I'm trying to say. All I want in the piece of the pie are the classes. I'm going to get your percentages and your angle measures from your table. So I've got to see them calculated, or again, I'll count off if they're missing. Very good question. Or any other questions? Now, what's going to happen is this. You come with your calculator and something to write with. I'm going to give you a clean copy of the formula sheet. Both groups need to hear this. Never do you write on my formula sheets. If you write on my formula sheets, I'm going to take points off your test. Okay? Because we're going to use those same formula sheets the whole semester and save some trees. Okay? So that's why you can't be writing all over them, because I'm going to use them for test 2, test 3, whatever. Final exam. All right? You're always going to get a clean copy. So you don't need to bring your formula sheets, but you need to know what's on and what's not. The only 2 things that are on them are mean of the table and standard deviation of the table. So you got to be able to find the mean of the table and the standard deviation of the table and the Z-score formula. Those are the only 3 things that are on that formula sheet. Everything else you have to know. So what I will do is I'm going to get y'all started, and then my secretary is going to get the people in the lobby started. All right? And so I'm going to run check and make sure there are no issues with them and then come back. All right? So, start right at, as long as you start right at 9:25, within reason, I'll give you as long as you want to take the test. If you're 1 minute late, I'm taking it at 10:40. Okay? So don't get in a big hurry. It should not take you longer than an hour and 15 minutes. But some of us are real, I'm always the last one to turn mine in because I'm real careless. So I had to basically take a test twice, you know what I'm saying? So if you're like me, you have to go very slowly to keep from making a mistake, then time is not a problem. Okay, so you go very slowly, very carefully. If you got an accommodation and you need something else, then that's up to you to schedule that with your testing center, not me. But it's got to be done ahead of time. Because it's got to be done because the test is Thursday of next week. So that test has to be taken somewhere by Thursday. So if you need to go to the testing center, you got to make arrangements to do it at least before or on Thursday. Okay? So everybody clear about what's on your test and what you need to do. Rachel?
We will be down here.
The people that are on Thursday, since it's on Thursday will be in here. My people that are on Zoom on Thursday, I'll send them an email that reminds them. They're just going to report to the MCC lobby. Now, next time I'm going to switch it and make sure that on test 2, it's going to be on a Tuesday. And then you'll be in the MCC lobby. Okay, so the secretary will have the formula sheets. The lobby will be reserved for y'all only. So, you know, it tells you where to sit at the little cubicles or at the table. There's 4 to a table and then there are cubicles. So nobody else is going to be coming in studying. So the lobby is going to be reserved for them on Thursday and for y'all on that next time on Tuesday. Okay? And you'll just turn the test back into her. Okay? All right, now, what I'm going to do next is kind of introduce something. Now, homework, I'm going to give you homework on the Boxplot, so that new little bitty piece on the Boxplot. And I'm also going to give you homework on some reviews. But again, if y'all that are sitting in front of me right now have a question, you have to email. Because you won't physically be in class on Tuesday to ask that question. Okay. Now, let me kind of talk about something for a minute. We're going to kind of introduce this idea of what's going to happen basically in the test 2 material, and a part of it's me starting with a word of caution. All right, here's kind of your word of caution. We're about to start probability. Okay, now the reason I say that is this. You could do okay on test 1 if you didn't do your homework alone. Because test 1 is a lot of memorizing some definitions. You have all calculated the meaning before you got in here. And modes and medians. Everybody with me? So some of the material from test 1 was probably a little familiar to you before you walked in. For most people, that is not what's going to happen on test 2. Okay? Test 2 is on probability. And most of you do not have a big background in probability. A few of you might have taken a stats class in high school. Or a few of you might have done a real simple little probability problem in junior high. But most of us don't have a background in probability. So hear me say this. It is crucial, and especially with this AB cohort going on, okay, that makes it harder because I only physically see you half the time. You have got to do every homework problem as they're assigned or I'm going to lose you. Okay? You cannot play catch up on the weekends because now I got to go see Dr. D. In other words, you know you're going to be on Zoom on Tuesdays, and so you don't do Tuesday's homework till you do it on Wednesday night when you do Thursday's homework. You're going to get, if you do that, it's not going to go well. Okay? If you get lost, you need to contact me. Because here's what normally happens. What normally happens on probability is I come in, and they're all word problems. Okay? So I come in, and we go through a different kind of probability. And I show you the formula that goes with it, and it makes perfect sense to you, and you go home and you do your homework. Okay? Then the next time you come into class, whether you're on Zoom or physically here, I go over another kind of word problem that's got a different formula, and I go over it, it makes perfect sense, and you go home and you do part of your homework. And you're getting them right, so everything's good in your mind. Then you come in, okay, see what I'm saying? Well, here's what happens. Even somebody that does what I tell them, they come in on Tuesday, they do all their homework, it's great. They come in on Thursday, what I'm doing makes perfect sense. They do their homework, it's all right. They come in, there's a point where I go over a problem in class and suddenly you go in a hole. You're like, that looks just like a word problem that you did like last Thursday, but it's a different formula. I don't know why it's a different formula. You see what I'm saying? When that happens, what I need you to say to yourself is, she told me this would happen. I don't need you to panic. If you keep doing what I tell you to do, you will come out of the hole. You'll start noticing, oh, there was one word that was different that told me that. Or, oh, I see. All right? Now, what would be great is if I could tell you it happens to everybody after section 3.5. But what's weird is it happens to people at different times. It's almost like everybody's saturation point is different. So the wheels fall off the wagon for one person, a different place, and the wheels fall off the wagon for another person. What I need you to do, if your wheels fall off your wagon, is to contact me. And I delay test 2 a little bit longer so that you got time to come out of the hole. Here is what is a disaster. People that come in the first time, I go over, it makes perfect sense. They go home, do all their homework, it's all right. They come in the second time, I go over a new problem, they're totally with me, they go home, they do about 3/4 of them and they're getting those right, and people are starting to panic and they don't know why. And they come back and I go over the next kind of problem and they go home and their organic really was hard that time, so they didn't really quite get to, they did 1 or 2 of mine, and yeah, I got it. And they, do you know when the wheels fall off the wagon for those people? When I hand them test 2. And then it's too late. I can't get you out of the hole. Because when the problems are individual, it's fine. It's when I start mixing the types up that the wheels start kind of falling off. And I do that in homework kind of as we go. So you can't work 1 or 2 and say, I'm good. You've got to work them all as I assign them or you're going to get lost. Okay. So that's just kind of a word of warning. If you do what I tell you, everybody ends up being fine. So that's your kind of mama advice. Now, there's 2 kinds of probability that we're going to talk about. All right, so types of probability. And I want to go ahead and get those kind of in your notes. All right. Now, I'm going to call them something differently than your book calls them because I think mine's easier and really more mathematically right. Okay, now, the first kind we're going to call empirical. Empirical. Now, skip some space. The other kind is called theoretical. So that's what we're going to call the 2 types of probability. Empirical and theoretical. Now, empirical probability is based on experiments. It's based on experiments. What do you think theoretical, look at the name of it, what do you think theoretical probability is based on? Theory. Now, they're both fractional looking formulas, okay? And I'm going to kind of write them both down so that you have them both in your notes. On empirical probability, here's how you're going to make your fraction. All right? On the top, it's going to say number of times the event occurred. And on the bottom, it's going to say number of times the experiment was performed. Number of times the event occurred, and on the bottom, it's going to say number of times the experiment was performed. On theoretical, here's what your fraction is going to be. All right. The top is the number of ways the event can occur. And your bottom number is gonna be the number of possible outcomes. Your number of possible outcomes. Now, we're gonna kind of do this more on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we're gonna spend all of Tuesday doing probability. But is that gonna be on test 1? No, it's gonna be a what? On test 2. Now, I'm gonna do a problem on Tuesday that kind of talks about this. What is the probability of flipping a coin and getting tails? That's kind of the question that I'm going to kind of start with on Tuesday. What's the probability that when you flip a coin, you get tails? Now, here's what I need you to understand. A sample space is simply a list of all the possible outcomes. A sample space is a list of all the possible outcomes. An event is a subset of that. So it's a subset of the sample space. Now, what do I mean by that? When you flip a coin, what are all the things you can get when you flip a coin? All right, that would be your sample space. It's an actual list of all the possible outcomes. Heads or tails. In this problem, I'm asking you, what's the probability of flipping a coin and getting tails? Is everybody with me? Tails is my event. It's one of those outcomes. All right, you know what dice are? So a die, D-I-E, is a single cube. What's the sample space for rolling a die? If I roll a die, what are all the things I can get? 1 what? 2, 3, 4, 5 what? That's the sample space for rolling a die. So if I say, what's the probability of rolling a 2? Rolling a 2 would be my event. Or I might say, what's the probability of rolling an even number? So an even number would be my event. So in these problems where it's talking about event, do you understand what it means by event? Now, we're going to take, like I said, we're going to kind of talk about why there, on Tuesday, we're talking about why don't we just have one type of deduction? Why don't we just do it with theory and not do it? We're going to talk about all of that. Now, homework assignments always where? Okay. I will see y'all in class next Thursday taking the test. I will see my Zoom people in class on Tuesday.